Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 6 of Tsurune, and yeah, I couldn't wait. I got done with episode 5, and I loved episode 5. It was so good. It was definitely my favorite episode so far. Just our boys at a training camp, bonding, going to get groceries together, and then just like slowly Kaido and Minato like coming together and realizing their similarities and starting to get along, and just the boys learning about the Nakama and bonding, and that sometimes shooting isn't enough. You also have to like do things off of the range to gain a better perspective. And so before I start though, I do have a few things. I have one comment in particular from YouTube that I want to talk about. And then also something really cool. Wushin Sweebian shared some videos in the Discord. If you're a patron and you're on the Tsurune Discord with us, Wushin Sweebian shared some videos about Kyudo and about the practice itself. And there was something really, really cool in one of the videos. It was talking about the history, the culture, and just the lineage of Kyudo and its importance in Japan. And one thing that really stuck out to me is the idea that it's almost like Kyudo is a form of martial arts, which I was like, that's really awesome, that it's a way of people to express themselves with their bodies, but also the fact that Kyudo is in a way talked about like a meditation almost, and that it requires an extremely diligent sense of peace and soundness of mind, body, and tranquility in order for it to be effective. And also the idea in the video talking about how in Kyudo, it's not the idea of how accurate you are, or that it's not really, there are no points. Like, I didn't realize this, but the targets don't have points. You either hit it or you don't hit it. That's basically it. It's not like a bullseye. It's not like American archery where there's like different points designated to like inside the rings of the target. No, the idea is that you either hit it or you don't. But the idea also of Kyudo is that your form and your mindset allows you to become in the zone where you just see the arrow hitting the target and you don't even have to think about it. It's like a form of meditation almost. And that was so cool. And I think that ties so well to this series because Minato, as a character, his mind has seemingly been in such turmoil because of his mother's death, because of his seemingly falling out with Seiya, even though Seiya's trying to mend it, and then his target panic. So all these things going on, the idea that Minato can look to Masa, look to his friends, and look to Kyudo as a form of therapy almost is really interesting, and I like that a lot. So the videos were really cool. I sat there eating lunch. I ate lunch one day and watched the videos like, this is amazing. And so yeah, if you get a chance, I will try to post in the description the link to those videos because they were really, really cool. I liked them a lot. The one in particular, I'll go ahead and link the one that I watched that talked about like the beginnings of it. And then if you're a patron, you can see the others in the Discord. But yeah, that was really awesome. So I liked that a lot. So thank you, Wish and Sweebian, for sharing those. They gave me a nice perspective going into the series of like, yeah, Kyudo is not just a sport. It's literally an art form, which is so fascinating. But also, non-binary Jitlung had some really cool notices in their comment for way back in episode 3. Talking first of all how Kaido is like Kyo from Fruits Basket. I'm like, yes, they are very similar in archetypes. Absolutely. But so yeah, I forgot about this. In episode 3, one of the members of Kirasaki was looking for the same target panic pamphlet that Ryohei was looking for. So apparently, I don't know if it was the guy with glasses that has target panic or if he was looking for a friend, but someone on this nationally recognized team may have target panic. And I'm like, oh, so what do we do about that? So I don't want any spoilers, no hints, clues, or nothing. We'll find it out. But I thought that was interesting to note that, yeah, that is the case in the episode. But also, a couple of things that were brought up. One being the idea that Nanao kind of said that they admired Ryohei. And I was like, yeah. And then now has this fan club with all these fangirls and has to put on this kind of persona of how they are. And I wonder if Nanao kind of gets tired of it after a while. And they're like, I wish I could just be myself. Because Nanao seems super optimistic and really perceptive, but he also seems like maybe he has a quieter side. And when he's around like all the fangirls and stuff, he can't exercise that persona. He has to put on a different face because he tries to have like the fan guy, like the fan club, he tries to have like the rock star persona amongst the girls on the Kyudo club team, and none of them buy it. They're all like, stop. And so I wonder if maybe he'll be able to be more of himself around the Kyudo team than he is around his fan club. I guess we'll find out. And then finally, Ryohei being thinking of Minato as a hero, and Minato not being the same as what Ryohei thought of him back then. Obviously, his mom's death has impacted it a lot. Like, I'd say that's the primary thing, is that losing a parent, I can't even imagine, especially at his age, what that would do to you mentally. So clearly that's been the main source of effect on Minato. But him and Seiya have had some kind of falling out with one another. Something has happened, and we don't know what exactly yet. We get hints and clues of what it could be, but it's not come out in the wash yet completely. So I'm sure by the end of the season we'll get that, but I am curious about it and what we'll end up getting. So no spoilers, but I thought that was really cool to think about. So non-binary Lung, thank you for pointing those things out and bringing them to our attention. But yeah, so time for these archery boys. I see what they're up to for this. I'm excited though. I can't wait to find out what's going to happen, and I hope you all are too. So with that being said, I hope you all are excited, but we are going to start episode 6 of Tsurune. We're halfway through the season. Pretty excited, but we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I like how I feel inclined to bring Whiteboard Kun out. Even like as I'm finishing the episode, I'm like, no, it needs to come out. This series, it gets better and better. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Like, it feels like we hit a turning point. Like, no, the first 3 episodes were good. I liked the first 3 episodes. They were setting up Minato. Something's up with him. He has a past. Getting him back into Kyudo, setting up Masa, and setting up the 4 of them together. Like, I really liked episodes 1 through 3. But then once episode 4 happened, it was like the start of a turning point. And I was like, oh, okay. Now we're getting them all working together. We're like building the Nakama. It's good. But episode 5 was definitely like that hard transition. Like, no, we are in the second act now. Our boys know each other. They've bonded. They're really into Kyudo. Now we can develop them even more. And it feels like in the OP, you have the flower blooming. It feels like they're all starting to bloom. It's all starting to come out. And we're halfway through the season at this point. And fitting, we're about to go into our first match, and it seems like they're gonna face a Fujiwara's team, and I'm like, that sounds terrifying because they're really good. So interesting. Okay, all right, we need to go through this episode. I wanted to bring Whiteboard Kun out because this episode is called "The Reason for Shooting," and so everybody has a reason why they're doing the thing that they do. So we have our reasons. The reason for shooting. Okay. There's that, but there's also, it's not only the reason for shooting, but it's our motivation and goals. Okay. And so we have this in play, and we have obviously Minato. We have Seiya. We have Ryohei. We have Kaido. We have Nanao. We have Masa. We don't really get a lot with the girls, and I get that. I could see where somebody would complain that we don't really focus on the girls at all, but they are just kind of there, and there is a part of me that's like, man, I wish they had a more active role in this story instead of just being like a factor making this a co-ed team, but we really don't get a lot with them, so I'm not going to include them on here. If we get more development with them, and maybe that'll be a season 2 thing, is that we get more development with the girls. I don't know, but they're just not very present at this point, and so I'm not going to include them on here. And then we're going to put Fujiwara Shu. They call him by his first name. For Seiya and Minato, it is on a first name basis, and I'm like, okay. All right, Sho, you want me to ship them? Fine. They've not even interacted with one another yet in this season, and we're already shipping them. Okay. So the motivation and goals, but I also want to put on here, along with the reason for shooting, that maybe there is some mystery, what mystery we have with their character. All right. Because I think that is rather important to bring up, right? But Tommy-sensei is the bomb. I freaking love Tommy-sensei. I would party with that old man all day, any day. He is suave and he is speaking my language. But yeah, so the now is kind of the first person we touch upon with all of this, where he's really having a hard time focusing on Kyoto because they are like stalking him all the time. And he's like, oh, I know. Why don't you guys just come cheer me on at my game and then I'll see you guys there. Isn't that right? So for now, his motivation and goals, I feel like for now, part of joining the Kyoto team, it's not only to be with Kaido, but it's also for him to be himself. Because I think one of the things that he is struggling with as a character is that he has this persona he has to keep up, this appearance as being the pretty boy that has the fangirl club, and you can tell he's kind of just like in the last episode he almost forgot, and then he told the guys, he's like, oh yeah, we have to post a thing on my social media so that the girls will know that I'm okay. He feels like he's obligated to keep up this fan club with these fangirls, but then he's not really happy with it. He's like, I just can't be myself. And so there is like some question about, does Nanao have a secret side to himself? It doesn't have to be his sexuality. I said in the reaction, I'm like, maybe Nanao doesn't like girls and this is all a big front, but that doesn't have to be it. It doesn't have to have anything to do with his sexuality. It could just be that maybe Nanao's not as extroverted as what he led on at the beginning of the series, right? Because every time we've really seen him off the range, he's with Kaido and they're by themselves. They're not like out at a social gathering. He's not like bebopping around, hanging out at the club or hanging out like, in a big popular gathering. It's just him and Kaido. So maybe Nanao is secretly kind of introverted and isn't really as extroverted as he seems to be, but he can be himself. And it's like a form of therapy meditation on the range that he doesn't get anywhere else. So now it's kind of the first person that we run in that talks about that, right? And Ryohei comes in clutch. He's like, Merha! He's like, hey! And then I was like, oh, you saved me. And he's like, from what? Ryohei is a freaking golden retriever. I love him so much. He's like, nice assist. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, He's like, I'm exhausted with these girls, but I'm fired up about Kyoto right now, and they won't cut me any slack. And he's like, oh, is that a brag? Because for Ryohei, he's like, you got all the girls at your beck and call, and then now it's like, I don't really care about that. It's like, So he's like, oh, look, there's Minato and Seiya. Yeah, Ryohei is all about the friendship. So Ryohei, he really joined the Kyoto Club because of Minato from the beginning, because he admired Minato and thought he was like the hero protag and was like, I want to be in the same club as that guy. So Ryohei is really, his motivation and reason for shooting is solely his Nakama. His Nakama, and kind of like Nanao, the fact that they, or he, is accepted. He is accepted for being himself. I feel like that's why Nanao kind of latches on to Ryohei a bit, because Ryohei is so genuine and Ryohei is himself. And he lamented to Nanao back in episode 3 that he was like, he's like, am I too much? Am I weird? It's okay if I'm too much. I can tone it down or try to. And Nanao's like, no, he's like, be yourself. So the Kyoto range is where they can be themselves and not be judged. And I feel like Nanao might like latch onto Ryohei because of that, because he's like, oh, you can be genuine and you're yourself. And that's what I want to be. I want to be able to do that like you do. And so I think that's really cool. I think Ryohei's motivations and goals are the simplest, but that's kind of what's great about his character. Like, you have to have stock characters and you have to have round characters. You have to have flat characters, round characters, layered characters, simpler characters. You have to have a plethora and a variety for a good story. And I don't think Ryohei has to be complicated. He can be the one that's like the glue of the team holding them together. He can be that. He just needs to be, and Ryohei's not simplistic. He has some layers to him. It's just not like as layered as other characters, right? So there is this thing with Kaido though. Kaido, it seems like he wants to talk to Masa and ask him these big questions, but he doesn't want to do it in front of everybody. He's a little bit tsundere and shy. He's like, there's something I want you to help me with. So it's really his form, right? He talks about how his form, he wants to be able to shoot as well as he can, but at the same time, he doesn't want to do it in front of the others. He doesn't want to reveal that he has a weakness. Kaido doesn't want to reveal that he's not the strongest person there. And him asking for Masa for help with his shooting form would reveal that. So Kaido's motivations is, we're not quite sure the reason he's shooting and why he's so serious about Kyudo. We don't know. There's some kind of connection with Masa. We're not really sure what it is yet. We've not got any more insight into it, but he trusts Masa and respects him a lot, and he goes to him for guidance. And so that has something to do with why he shoots. But his mystery and goal is that he wants to be strong and better himself. But he also wants to do that without anyone else knowing that that's what he's doing. He wants to come across as being this strong, impenetrable presence, but doesn't want to admit that, yeah, he really needs some guidance too. He just doesn't want to come off that way. As Seiya, being the, very blunt individual that he is, says that the club shut down for a week for test prep, right? I was going to look up what an escalator school is. I wanted to the concept of an escalator school. Okay, it is an educational school that offers education from elementary or middle until university. Okay, it is, escalator schools are called so because students usually rise to the next grade without having to take an entrance exam. While many Western private schools are this way, escalator schools are far more prevalent in Japan and in the Philippines than in other countries. Okay. They're commonly found in anime and manga. They are a quick explanation for having characters of very different ages in the same school setting realistically. Oh, okay. So it's like an all through school thing. Okay. So later when they say that a school is an escalator school, it just means that they rise up from grade school to university. They don't have to take an entrance exam to get into it. Kind of like in Haikyuu. In Haikyuu, there's a character that tried to take an entrance exam to get in and they didn't make the score, so they couldn't go there. Gotcha. Makes sense. So yeah, Masa's like, yeah, no. And I like that Masa does a very good teacherly thing. He's like, no, grades come first, and then we do the extracurriculars. Grades come first, and then you can do it, all right? Afterwards, we can come. It's only a week. It's not going to be that bad. You guys have got this. And so we cut from the intro in that to him helping Ryohei with his technique. And Masa is such a good teacher. He's very hands-on. He very much wants to be a kinesthetic learner. He wants to show you how to do it and you learn from example. Because there's you're either an audio learner, you're a visual learner, or you're kinesthetic, which means you're very hands-on, kind of like what Masa's doing with them with the bow techniques, or you're a combination. I am a very kinesthetic visual learner. I need to see something happen in order to know how to do it. If you just give me an instruction manual and tell me to read it and figure it out, I'm like, yeah, I could do that, but I want to see it happen too. But Masa's whole motivation is revenge. But it's kind of like the most softest revenge possible. It's like the softest revenge. He wants revenge because we talk about his grandfather. His grandfather was the Grand Master. Tommy-sensei said he was the master archer. So Masa has in his blood the ability to be an archer, which is great. It's good. But he says that his grandfather was not a good teacher. His grandfather just expected Masa to be good, but didn't know how to explain how to do something to Masa. And Masa, he's like, I don't want my students to be in the same mindset where it sounds like Masa didn't like his grandfather because of how strict he was, and kind of just didn't, have those same emotions like he feels now as an adult he should have had. And so he's trying to make sure his students don't have that same mentality fostered against him, which is kind of admirable. I like that. But I also like that Masa, even though it seems like maybe he didn't like his grandfather, he still respects him. He still's like, yeah, my grandfather was an amazing archer. But not everybody that is amazing is a good teacher. That's the thing. And that's kind of true of everything. I hate the phrase, those who can't teach. I hate that phrase because I'm like, it's implying that a teacher is weak. But no, I feel like sometimes good teachers are people who have both been successful but have also failed in something. Because if you've been successful, you know what that feels like, and you can pass that on to others, that you can get them excited and amped for that feeling, and you're like, you'll know when it hits you, and it's very, I feel like you can better reach a student and help them prepare for a goal that way. But I think it's important that a teacher also understands what failure is, and when you do fail, and what that feels like, and what do you do after that, right? Because if you're just great at something and you've never failed, and then you try to teach someone and they fail, how do you handle that? How do you teach them? So I feel like that's where Masa's from, because Masa's gone through target panic. He's also been really good. So he is kind of, again, the best of both worlds, and it helps him to be a teacher, whereas his grandfather seemed like he was just really good, but didn't know how to teach someone that wasn't on the same level. So it's a long-winded rant about that. But he helps Ryohei hold the bow right? And tells him to be gentle with it and get his form right. And so I'm also realizing that the women are wearing the pads over their chests as literally a protection. That seems like what it is. But yeah. And then Ryohei, it shows that he, like, the bow, the grip does something, and Kaido notices it. He's like, I missed again. And Kaido's like, he's like, your shoulders are too tense. That's why you missed. And what Kaido wants to do, if you guys watch that video that I'm going to link you all, in the video, it shows that when they shoot the bow right, the actual bow, like, it leans. And it's very noticeable. It just, like, it leans a very noticeable way. And you're like, ah. And Kaido wants his bow to turn, because that means that his shot is proper and it's beautiful. And Masa's like, he's like, the bow turning is a result, not a goal. Like, you can't just keep firing thinking it's eventually going to happen. You have to get your form right. And then when you do something, that will be the result of it. So it's not something you build towards. It's something that you just have to do properly. And Masa's like, I'm going to teach you how to do that. He's like, yeah, it'll make you look real cool if you can get it to work, but it's all about the form of it. You have to, the simplest way is to flick your wrist after you fire. And that's the bow. That's not the bow turning. That's you turning the bow. And he's like, and Masa's like, look, I'm showing you how to do it. You can either choose to do it this way, or you can choose to do it another way. He's like, I'm just letting y'all know that's how this works. And so he's like, okay. He's like, then do it the hard way. And I love that he shows them exactly how to do it. He says, wait as long as you can until the bow turn happens naturally. Bow turning is a result, not a goal. I love it. And he's very serious. I love that Masa, for being as, like, sarcastic as he can be at times and as jovial as he can be very serious and like, no, this is how you do it. You wanted to know. I'm telling you. And he's like, if you get things out of order, you will fail. And Kaido's like, well, dang it. He's like, I want to do the thing. And so anyway, he's like, don't rush. Focus less on the bow turn and more on how to fire the arrow properly. He's like, things will happen if you just, he's like, if you quit focusing on trying to get the bow to turn and just get your form right, eventually it will happen without you even having to try anything. So I like that Masa tries to reach Kaido, and Kaido takes him very seriously, right? And man, that shot, yeah. The bow, it shows the bow turning in Masa's hands. It vibrates, and you can't really tell it in the reaction unless you're paying attention, but the bow, like, vibrates in his hand and turns, and the arrow is like, bullseye. Straight into it. A beautiful shot. Like, yeah. So it's great. And they're all kind of like, oh my gosh. And I love that all the girls are like, Masa-san, can you teach us how to do that? I love that the girls are all instantly like, we want to do that. Can you help us, sir? It's great. And then, yeah. I love it's the two girls, not Seo. Seo doesn't get in on it, but it's Yuna and the other girl, and then Inao gets on it too. And he's like, whoa, one at a time. And they all like crowd around him. And then Kaido gets mad because he's like, why do we have to go on break? I want to keep. And Ryohei's the same way. He's like, I want to practice. And Masa's like, you boys being so gung-ho. I love it. I love how happy he is. He's like a damn Studio Ghibli dad. He's just having such a great time, right? And so then Minato coming up after him while he's alone. And he tells him get everything washed. Masa's like, boys, wash your shirts, wash your clothes. You'll get a foot fungus if you don't clean your socks. And the girls are like, gross. And then Minato, It's so crazy. Minato looks so small next to Masa. Masa's such a big, like, tall, powerful guy, and Minato looks so small compared to him. He's like, should I return my kimono as it was? Because he realizes Masa explains he was taught by his grandfather, and Minato connects the dots and realizes that the kimono that he wore during the ceremony and during training camp was his grandfather's. He's like, oh, should I have taken better care of that? Because it seems like it was important. And he's like, no, I'm sure it's fine. He's like, it doesn't need to be washed that often. He's like, you said it belonged to your grandfather. And he's like, yeah. And he seems kind of solemn about it. Like, he doesn't want to bring up his grandfather's teaching style. Like, he doesn't really want to bring up his grandfather. Minato's kind of like, And Minato probably thinks, because Minato's like, his grandfather's dead, Minato probably thinks it's a really sore subject. And he's like, oh, did I bring up something I shouldn't have? Because he would know. So it's kind of sad. Minato's like, oh, I probably shouldn't have brought that up. He's like, never mind. And he's like, and that's when Masa says, my grandfather's teachings made me an archer. But he looks pretty serious when he says that, right? He doesn't look like that's necessarily a good thing. And I like that. So his brother talks about how he's mellowed over time, right? So like, it seems like Masa was a much more serious and stern archer. And then after the target panic and after everything else, he calmed down, right? But I don't think his grandfather probably perpetuated that. And then he looks real serious, but then he turns to Minato and gives him like this little smile, like it's okay. No worries. We're fine. And Minato's just kind of like, what do I do with this? Okay. And so of course we see our boys going after the vending machine stuff. I like that Ryohei has looks like a chocolate banana popsicle. And now it's like already ate his. And Seiya had coffee. He did not have a popsicle. And I like that Seiya talks about training on his own. We know that Kaido has like the exercise tool that lets him like practice his form, which is fun. And so they're like, do you think Kirasaki keeps practicing? And Kaido says there's no way they take breaks for tests over there. It's an escalator school. Yeah, so basically at Kirasaki, you can go from grade school to university and you don't have to take an entrance exam. You can just stay there on track without having to worry about test scores. Makes sense. Once you're in, you're in. And so interestingly enough, Minato and Seiya, they transferred out. Okay. Good to know. And I liked it when I was like, well, I felt like we studied, but I'm not sure. And Kaido's like, you don't even remember? Like, what? Did something traumatic happen to you? like, no. And Seiya's like, we certainly had off on the test days themselves. He's like, lucky. He's like, knock off the lucky crap. Being jealous all the time is pathetic. Like, Kaido says that. Kaido's like, I like that Kaido's like, no, don't be jealous, right? So, and then, of course, they apologize. And there's like a 4-leaf clover stuck in there. Kazumai is nice in its own way. And I liked it now. I was like, yeah, Tommy-sensei is pretty hands-off. It's nice. It's pretty good. And they all kind of reminisce and talk about it. And Kaido's like, I still want to get better. And then they talk about Masa's grandfather. And then we cut over to old Tommy-sensei inviting Masa on a date. And at first I was like, oh, it's not really a date. And it's not, but I almost thought that, because since we cut straight to the Kirasaki training, like the private school grounds, for a second I thought that Tommy-sensei was inviting him to like go watch a practice. But then again, why would the rival team invite the coach of your rival team to a practice? They wouldn't. So, but yeah, no, Kirasaki's really, really good. Like, they hit lots of their targets. They have the first place prestigious trophies. There's like at least a dozen trophies there. And everybody's saying yes, they're hitting the targets left and right. They have enough players. Like, Kirasaki has the Karasuno mentality where they have barely enough players to make a team, a squad. They have just the right amount. Whereas Fujiwara's team, they're like having tryouts to see who's going to qualify. It's like, okay, sure. But they call Fujiwara the prince. He does look like a prince, doesn't he? He does look like a prince. He's very stoic and very quiet and very serious. Right? And then so we have the twins. The twins are fun. They're chaotic. They're fun. They look identical. And I love that they shot each other's targets, which is kind of hilarious. So yeah, they're seem like chaos, but them and Fujiwara are the only first years on the team, which is rather curious. I'm sure Fujiwara feels a bit maybe betrayed by Minato and Seiya not joining him because they were together in middle school. I feel like maybe Fujiwara feels like he's sad that they didn't come with him and maybe lonely, even though he has the twins, but they don't seem to know each other very well. His reason for shooting is, I am sure, Minato. I am positive it's Minato, right? I feel like it's Minato and Seiya, and to prove himself to them, right? I feel like that. Of course, it doesn't seem like there's any like bad blood between them though, because when Seiya is talking about Shu, he's like, well, do you think, he's like, are you going to be okay seeing him after all this time? And I'm sure that Seiya is asking Minato that because he's like, look, we kind of just left him. We were all going to this school, Kirasaki, and then we just decided at the last minute to pull back. So I'm sure he feels kind of betrayed or at least lonely that we're not there. So he's like, are you sure you're going to be okay seeing him for the first time after all this? Like, is especially what went down in finals. The parts that we know is that he got target panic and then kind of collapsed. He's like, are you going to be all right? And Minato's like, oh, I'm sure he's forgotten all about me. No. No, or you're the very reason he's shooting. So yeah, it seems like there's no bad blood, seemingly. But Shu, like, once he has a love of archery, it is established. But if this is going to be like Run with the Wind, where Shu and Minato, it's like, I love running, but you are running, I'm going to freak. It's already happening. They've not been on screen together for more than 5 seconds, and I'm already shipping them. I just get that, Haiji Kakeru vibes, where it's like, I love archery, you are archery to me. I'm getting those vibes. And I'm here for it. So, but yeah, I like Fujiwara. He's very mysterious. But also, you get the impression that the third years and the upperclassmen, the second and third years, are rather jealous of the first years and how talented they are. And so the class president was the one finding the target practice thing. So Shinichi and Manji. Okay. Manji. And I like that he has an apostrophe in his name. Shinichi are the twins. Okay. They are the twins, and they're kind of chaotic. I like them, though. No banter in front of the targets. And they're like, right. Mm-hmm. I like it. And they're like, right. Yeah. And so we don't really know the guy that has that. Oh, God. Turn on the sound again. We don't know the guy that has the Nori Rin fan. He seems like a character. And so, like, their form is different than what born and bred Kirasaki shooters like us use. So we're establishing that the president and the guy with the Nori Rin fan, they've been shooting for Kirasaki since, like, grade school. They have been trained to perform in a certain style. Whereas these two kind of have this sort of rapid fire shooting. Which is not, like, the very therapeutic way that we normally do with Kyudo, but it works for them. But it seems like the president and the boy with the fan and Shu, they have gone from Kirasaki from start to finish. And so they're used to how Kirasaki functions. Okay. Makes sense, right? They're bold and swift. Mm-hmm. And they can hit with speed like that. It's the definition of rapid fire. Yeah. And so we have this one guy, but then Shu, he's so damn elegant. Like, look at this business. Like, his perfect hair. He definitely is a prince. Like, look at that business. The young prince. The thought of missing never entered his head. I mean, how do we know that, though? How do we know that? How do we know the thought of missing? I feel like that's not the case. I feel like he thinks quite a bit about missing because he knows about Minato and how things have been for him. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's the case. But he's very good. Yeah, he's clearly, like, amazing. I do like the idea in Kyudo that it's not about where you hit on the target. It's just how many times you hit. So that makes me feel a little bit better, because at first I was like, oh, well, if they don't have a bullseye, it's going to be bad. But that's not really what's affected here. He's fired the most beautiful shots since his first year of middle school. I can't imagine what he's been motivated by. and Motomura. So we get the other members of their team, right? We get the other members of Kirasaki's team. We have Motomura. Motomura is the president, who has the glasses. He seems very much like Seiya, to an extent. I'm wondering if the guy with the Nori Ren fan is kind of like maybe Nanao and Ryohei put together. And they remember Minato. He had a beautiful firing form, but they can't remember who he was. All right. And so they have this giant team. There's like a lot of people playing. And the coach, who has a very Reagan Arataka tie, talks about how anybody... I like his mentality, though. I like this mentality. And I feel like the second and third years kind of grimace at it. But his mentality, he is very performance-oriented. He's like, I don't care if you're a first year, second year, or third year. Don't care. As long as you're the best, then you're going to get to play. And I kind of like that, because normally there's this mentality of, oh, the third years, we've got to give them seniority because it's their last year, it's their last chance. No, very similar to Ace of the Diamond. It's like, no, if you're good, and we'll use you. If you're not, then you sit on the bench. So I like that. I like that they're going to have their 5 players and have some alternates in case if they need them. The criteria for selection. Can we participate if we want to? And he says yes. And you can tell that the second years are like, they're worried that they're not going to get to play. And Muto-sensei is like, well, you're basing... So Muto, we'll get him. He's the redheaded one. They're like, so we're going to base everything off 10 shots and that's it. And I like the coach is like, yeah, because in an actual competition, 10 shots is all you get. So how is this any different? I like it. It's really good. And Fujiwara, he just steps up to bat. Doesn't even care. Yep, I won't put weak or lousy shots in the tournament. I love it. And Fujiwara's like, I know what I have to do. I've got a man that I've got to impress. It's like, oh my God, already. So we get them on their time off. Minato is, he's hanging out with Seiya and Kuma. Seiya comes over with him. Kaido is practicing his form, even though he should be practicing his tests. And of course, Nanao is hanging out with him. And he's like, talk about obsessed. He's like, he told you not to rush it, didn't he? And he's like, it ain't like that. He's like, if you want to practice. Even Nanao's hoodies have frogs on them. I love it. He's like, I'll just be off studying and getting good grades. I love it. It's cute. And then we cut to Seiya and Minato. So as far as we know, Seiya's motivations are that he's a perfectionist. And he seems to want to do good for himself, but also he wants to mend fences with Minato. Again, they are really playing close to the mystery of what went down with the three of them, with Shu, with Minato, and with Seiya. And I don't want any clues. I don't want to be like, you'll find out in episode 8. Don't tell me. Please don't. So I don't want to know any clues or hints, but they are really playing it close to the vest, right? Of what will possibly happen. And Minato, we kind of pick up where we left off in previous episodes, where Minato was like, what did you want to talk about? Didn't you want to have a conversation? And Seiya's like, well, nothing in particular. He's just like, and then Minato says, listen, I'm not great at talking about myself. Minato's like, I'm not good at speaking from my heart. He's like, I'm bad at understanding how other people feel as well. And Seiya's just looking at him like totally accepting, like, no, it's fine. And he says, but I've decided that I want to try harder to talk to people in the future. So that's setting up a lot of things. That's setting up that he's going to want to try to talk to Shu, which might be interesting. But Minato, he wants to be a better, no, Huckleberry. He wants to be a better communicator. My dog is like, you should quit talking about archery and play the dog form of archery, which is fetch. So he wants to be a better communicator. He wants to be more open about his feelings and communicate better with others, right? And so he's like, I hope that you will too. So he wants to talk with Seiya. Yeah. he wants to talk with Seiya. He's like, I don't quite understand what all is wrong with us. He's like, but I want to talk with you about it and for us to become better friends again, which I like. I like that that's very natural. He's like, come on. And Seiya's like, okay. He's like, what will you do with Shu then? Are you going to talk to Shu? If you attend the preliminaries, you're going to run into him one way or another. And I like that Minato is like, oh, he's like into Shu? And he almost seems like he's kind of like nostalgic. Like, oh, I'm going to run into him? Huh? Who? And he says, and then they are going to retrieve the arrows. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, you hit the target frame? But they say that a hit is a hit. Okay, so that's also foreshadowing. If Minato manages to hit the target frame, it's still a hit. We're going to count it. All right. It's like the best out there. He's like, group 4. It's your turn. All right. And then Fujiwara, of course, is wonderful. They're like, crush those upperclassmen. I like that the twins are like, come on, do it. They're like not very traditional. They're very kind of loud. And he's like, quiet. He's like, and then they're both like, meh. Doesn't matter. Fujiwara's not distracted. And then, like, Shu's forgotten all about me now, I'm sure. Yeah, how about he hasn't? I was like, no, I'm sure that like the biggest misunderstatement of the century. Yeah, no, he is shooting for you, you fool. And he's like, what about you, Minato? To be honest, I'm a bit afraid and I feel bad. Yeah. He's like, Shu would be happy to know that you're still doing Kyudo. Yeah. And so Minato, he's just like, you think so? It's like, yes, Baka. Of course he would. Because Shu loves archery. So he loves archery, so he'd be happy to know that you're still doing archery because that means he gets to see you. It's like, it's a bonus, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nailed it. And he says, I hope you're right. Maybe I can face him again then. So yeah, so basically Minato has been like, he couldn't face Shu, probably because of the target panic. So Minato is shooting to overcome his weakness. And he's trying to make himself a better person. I'm like, awesome, good for you, Minato. And that's not something that's easy to do. So even though he's able to have this conversation with Seiya, and he has his emotional support, Bernie's mountain dog, in his lap, it's good for them to talk about this now. But it is going to be, I imagine it's still going to be hard for Minato actually on the field, because you're not only dealing with seeing somebody again for the first time, but there's all the pressure from archery, there's all the pressure of the competition. Like, it's not going to be easy in practice, but I'm glad that they're at least talking about it and setting that up. That's really good. And then we cut back to Fujiwara. So yeah, so the twins coming up there and talking to him, and then the funny thing is that they talk about Minato having target panic, and Fujiwara's like, why are you making enemies? He's like, why are you talking about somebody that's not even here? That one guy that had target panic. He's like, they talk about how Kyudo is the one sport. They talked about it in the video as well. It's like one competitive sport where you don't actually face anyone. It's the competition where you yourself you are the enemy. You are the competition. It's how can you overcome your own doubts and your own weakness to shoot this arrow in a beautiful form. So Fujiwara's like, yeah, you guys are talking about Minato and trying to like talk smack about him when he's not here, when what's happened with him will not affect us in any way, shape, or form. It's just however well we perform on that day. Everyone else doesn't matter. And they were like, oh, sorry, man. I didn't mean to like, it's like you like him or something. And so, but he definitely stands up for Minato. He definitely does in that moment. And that's when Kabashima, the second year, comes in. So Kabashima is the one. Kabashima's the redhead. And he wants them to throw their chances. He wants them to miss purposefully so that the older kids can go, that's very very bold to say, you know, to be like, hey, we need you to throw your chance so that some of the second and third years can go. And it's like, no, the best goes. And if you're not the best, well, that's not their problem, right? Again, it's the idea in Kyudo, there are no enemies. It's just you are the enemy. If you're not good enough, sorry. And he says, certainly not, Kabashima-senpai. And he's like, you're our kohai. You need to show some manners. Like, to offer their seats to them. He's like, you want us to miss intentionally? And then he's like, this will be our last high school tournament for the third years. And so, but he says, he's a second year. He's like, oh, it's the third year's last tournament. And then the twins are like, oh, well, you're not even a third year, so why don't you throw the match so they can all go? And he's trying to pull seniority, but Fujiwara and them are like, no, we're not going to do that. And they're like, baka. And he says, hippo. Just forget what that jerk has to say. Right, Fujiwara? And Fujiwara is so quiet. He's so stoic. He just sits there and looks pretty. It's just, But I like his character already. I want him and Minato to talk again and to reunite. I want to see this. Maybe we will see this in the next episode. That'd be great. But we cut to the bar where Tommy-sensei is best man. He is like, I love that he pulls up and Masa's like, really? We're having a beer this early? And he's like, the day drink tastes the sweetest. I'm like, dude, he's a day drinker. Get out of town. Look at him partying it up with his sake. I love it. And he said, we had a groundbreaking ceremony at the shrine today. So, okay, so that might explain why Rin is there. Masa has been cleaning up the shrine. He's been cleaning up the shrine and getting it ready. And the brother's taking photos like as a promotion for it. So they had an opening ceremony. So that explains a lot. Okay, that explains a lot. And so then we find out that Tommy-sensei offered him to coach before the first time he called, and Masa said no. But we find out that was probably around the same time that Minato stumbled into him. And that changed his mind. Like working with Minato and talking with him gave him the inspiration to want to go back and take the coaching job. And it just so happened it was at that same school. But again, I like the idea that Masa talks about revenge and how his grandfather's teachings weren't the way that he wanted to teach. And he wanted to keep the tradition of Kyudo going, but he wanted to pass it along in a different way. And it's cool how they talk about the different forms in which you teach people and how you can teach people new styles and new ways of communicating. It was a really cool conversation, and I liked that between the two of them as they bonded as two coaches. It's fun because I'm doing some coaching stuff right now, and the person that my associate that I'm working with is a coach that I had when I was competing. And so it's kind of like, you know, you learn from the person that taught you, and so it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love this conversation between the two of them. It's so wonderful. He's like, and yet you call that revenge. I'm completely on board. I love that Tommy-sensei's like, sign me up. I'm with you. And Masa's just like, okay. And he's like, looks so precious. Like, it's so cute. He's just kind of like, all right, if you're going to join me, Tommy-sensei, it's sweet. And then, yeah, we see the preliminary. They get done with their tests. Everything's all set to go. They rush back to the Kyudo hall. And so they announce who the people are going to the tournament. Third years, Motomura and Sase. Sase's the one with the fan, so he's a third year. So Motomura and Sase are the third years. All right. Second years are Kabashima and Yushima. Yushima is the one with the shaved head. Got it. First years are Sugawara, Snichi, and Manji. And Fujiwara. Okay. And he's like, sir, looking so damn serious. Like, okay. All right. And then Masa had everything ready when they came in. I love that Ryohei's the first one in and Kaido was second. So cute. But they announced the preliminaries. The programs for the prefectural tournament prelims. And he's like, show us! And so I love they look down at it and see. And of course, it's like, they look at the program and they're like, where's our names? Where are we at on here? What's going on? I'm first in the individuals. And of course, of all the names on there, Minato sees Shu's. So they're going to reunite. It's going to happen. I'm so excited. I'm really excited, but this episode was so wonderful. It was so heartwarming, and we finally get Kirasaki's team. We get Sase and Motomura. We get Kabashima and the other one, the bald one, and then we get the twins, who I like the twins, and then we get Fujiwara. So the question is, of the 7, who's going to be on the firing squad for the 5? I'm going to say the twins are probably going to set it out, and it's going to be Fujiwara in the 2nd and 3rd years, but I could be wrong, and they're going to use the twins as alternates. Maybe. We'll see. But I really enjoyed this episode. I'm very curious to know your thoughts down below, but Tommy-sensei, best mentor, indeed. But please no spoilers, but I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed this reaction and discussion, but I also hope you have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm super excited, but I will be back very soon with more Tsurune. Bye.